Hello everybody and welcome back to another My Porch Prints tutorials. This is Kyra and today we are going to be working on part 2 of our autumn junk journal. This will be the final video in this series. If you haven't seen it already, I released a part 1 where I show you how to make the base cover for this journal from start to finish. And then today's video will be focusing on creating the closure for the journal as well as adding all of the pages on the inside and doing a little bit of light decorating using some pieces that we already created on the channel. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's tutorial. Alright, so to start I went ahead and printed off all of the papers I will need, including this hidden spine template. This is what we're going to be using to sew our pages into our book. This is actually available as a freebie on our Facebook group, but you can also get it in our Etsy shop if you don't want to join the group, that's fine. And then I did print this on cardstock, and I printed it on just white plain cardstock and then ran it through the printer again using this paper. This is from our Autumn Cottage collection. And I will be linking all of the papers that I've used down in the description box, so if you're interested, you can find everything in our Etsy shop. One of the things that I added to this as well was some coffee dyed papers that I went over with some distress ink along the edges just to make them a little darker and have a little more contrast here. But otherwise, all of these other papers, again, are kits from our shop. They include our Timeworn journal pages and papers, our filler papers, our handwritten script papers, lots of pretty papers here. And then I just ran them through the printer again, just regular plain 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. And I ran them through the printer again and printed our Thanksgiving paper pack on the back just to add a little bit more color and kind of keep with that autumn theme. And in total, I have 22 papers that I printed, and I'm going to be making 5 signatures because I am using the 2-inch spine, hidden spine template, and it comes with the 5 signatures built in. Depending on the size of your spine, yours could be different. So I think like the 1-inch spine has like a 2 signature spine going on. So just kind of make sure that you're using the right amount of signatures for whichever spine you use. I almost always personally use a 2-inch spine. I just like the way it looks. And it's also the most common size for the cereal box that I use. So the spine tends to be around 2 inches, but again, it just kind of depends on which cereal box you used in my first video. But once you know how many signatures you're using, you want to divide your papers by the number of signatures, and that will give you how many papers you need per signature. So mine ended up being around 4 papers, but I like to have around 6 to 8 papers in each of my signatures. I just like the way that looks. So I'm going to be supplementing again with those coffee dyed papers from earlier to help kind of make my signatures a little bit more bulky. Again, it really just depends on how many papers you want in your journal. So I'm going to go ahead and grab 4 pages, like I mentioned earlier, and then I'm going to supplement with 2 of these coffee dyed papers, and all you're going to do is fold all of those papers in half, and then you're going to kind of sandwich them between one another like this. All right, and that's going to give you your full signature. So I'm going to do that multiple times until I have all 5 signatures completed. And then once we have that, we can actually work on adding them into our journal. So you can see here I've got my 5 signatures. I do try to vary my papers so that it's not, you know, all blank pages in one signature or all of my decorative Thanksgiving papers in another signature. I like to have them a little bit more varied. And then using that hidden spine template that I mentioned earlier, I went ahead and cut those pieces out, and I already punched the holes that were marked on the template using this tool called an awl that comes with a bookbinding kit we have linked in our Amazon shop down below. And then I just went ahead and folded along the lines that are marked on the template here. And depending on the pattern you use, it can be kind of hard to see the holes you need to punch or the lines you need to fold. So, you know, maybe just consider that when you're choosing which pattern you want to print on these. I've used these enough that I can pretty much find them no matter what. And then I'm also using some bulldog clips to help hold everything in place, and I find that that's really handy. Along with that awl I mentioned earlier, or a sewing needle, any sharp object will help you here. And then you'll need some sewing needles and some thread. And again, I'm using that bookbinding kit. It makes things really handy. It has everything I need in it to bind my journals, as well as some waxed thread, which is really nice and allows me to work without my thread, sliding around. So I'm gonna measure out how much thread I need. So I usually go with about 3 times the length of my signature, 3.5 if I'm not sure how much I'll need. Usually that gives me plenty of string, usually too much actually, but I'd rather have too much than too little here. So we're gonna go ahead and thread that through our needle. You want 1 short string and then 1 really long string. And then we're going to set that aside as we create our holes in our signature. So grab your first signature, your first stack of papers here. Try to line everything up, get them pretty neat. You don't want them all, splayed out awkwardly. Try to get things straight. And then we're going to add this little thin part of our template here. The crease of it is going to go right against the crease of our signature. And then this is where those bulldog clips come in to clip that in place so that it doesn't slide around while we're punching our holes. This is really helpful. If you don't have bulldog clips, you can also use paper clips, or like clothespins would work too. And then we're just going to punch those holes through the spine of our signature, and you want to try to keep it on the spine so that everything stays aligned here. That's why we clipped it in place. So go ahead and punch out all 3 of those holes like this. And if you've done this before, this is called a pamphlet stitch, so feel free to skip ahead if you've seen this a million times, but I like to leave this tutorial in here for anyone who is new to bookbinding and hasn't tried this before. I also have a binding tutorial that has 9 different ways to bind a journal, so if you don't like this one, I will link that down below for you in case you want to try something different. But for today's video here, we want to remove that little template piece. You don't want to accidentally stitch that into your journal because you need it again for your other signatures. And then I like to do one last look through and make sure that all of my pages are oriented right side up. So you don't want any of these accidentally upside down. So this is kind of your last chance to make sure that you don't stitch them into the journal upside down. And then starting with this larger template here, we want to find our first sort of row of holes that we made. And we're going to pull our needle from the back to the front like this, with the thread going through that center hole. And then you're going to have this little tail left over here, and you want to clip this in place so that you don't pull it out. Otherwise you'll have to start over. So I usually grab another little bulldog clip like this, and that just makes sure that that doesn't come out. All right, so once that is secure, we're going to grab our needle here, and we're going to go through the back of our signature. Again, finding that center hole so that everything lines up. So going from the back of our signature, or the outside if you will, to the inside, and then just tug that through like so. And then once that is, pulled tight so that it is joined to our template spine here, we're going to go through the top hole of our journal just like this, from the inside to the outside, and then we're going to find that top hole on that first row of holes on the hidden spine signature here. And we're going to go like this from the front to the back and just give that a good tug, and that is going to create our first stitch here. All right, so flipping it over, we're going to now go all the way down to the bottom hole here at the bottom of the signature of our first row of holes, and we're going to go from the back through to the back of our signature, and we're going through to the inside like this. So go ahead and give that another tug, just like this. And then we're gonna find that center hole again, and this is gonna create our second stitch. So go ahead and go through like this, and be careful not to pierce through the thread. I've done that before, so just try to avoid that if you can. And then we're gonna give it a good tug, and that is the stitch done. It's really simple. And then one thing to make sure of is that this sort of long stitch here is on either side of these strings, like this. You want it kind of sandwiched between the two of them, otherwise this won't work. So just like this. All right, so it should be, you know, right in between those two strings. And then we're going to take these strings and tug them until it's tight enough that there is tension. You don't want it so tight that it tears the paper, so keep that in mind. And then we're going to tie this in a knot, and it's going to go right over that long stitch like this, and that's going to hold that stitch in place. All right, so go ahead and, you know, give it a couple ties to make sure that it's good and tight here. And then you can go ahead and remove this excess string. So I just cut it off with some scissors here. And that is our first stitch done and our first signature secured to our hidden spine, just like this. All right, and I like to go through and give it a good crease because it'll be a little stiff at first, but as you work with it, they'll get, you know, worked into the spine here. All right, so this is a really secure method. It holds the papers in. I've never had any problems with it. It is non-removable, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Once the pages are in, they're kind of in. So next we're going to work with our second signature, doing the exact same process. So, you know, adding your little template piece here. That's why we wanted to remove it earlier, and then use that as a guide to punch your holes and then stitch it into that second row of holes on our hidden spine template. So just repeat that process for all 5 signatures or however many signatures you have until all of them are secured to the hidden spine like this. And from here we can secure this into the journal itself. So what you're going to want to do is line up the spine of your hidden spine with the spine of your journal. So, you know, it's kind of nice if you use the cereal box. It's already got kind of those very clear-cut creases in the spine of the journal to kind of guide you here. And then we're going to add glue to these tabs on either side of the spine and just line everything up and glue them down in place, just like this. So try to get things kind of straight here. And then you're going to want to give these time to dry. So I usually clip my pages together and then use something heavy like a candle to hold those tabs down and just let them dry completely. All right, and while those are drying, we can start working on our closure. So I took 2 of these pages here from one of the kits, and I trimmed them down to fit inside of the covers of my journal. I did round the corners here, and then I cut a matching shape out of some chipboard that I had to make them sturdier. And then I'm going to just glue those pages down on top of the chipboard like this. Line everything up here. And I did add some stitching around the border of this page, but you can't really see it, so I only did it to 1, and I was too lazy to change the threads, so I'm not going to be doing that, but if you want to, you could add stitching to yours. And then I have some of these labels here. Again, I will link this kit down below, but I'm just going to grab 2 of these large labels to use on the top of each of these little panels that I have, and I did go over them with a little bit of distress ink in the color Vintage Photo just to give them a little bit more contrast and kind of keep with that warm color scheme that I'm trying to, you know, evoke with this journal. And then with these as well, I decided I wanted to add some pockets. So I have this page from the Autumn Cottage Ephemera kit, and I'm going to be cutting out these 4 little library cards here. And I did, again, go over them with the distress ink and rounded the corners. And I'm going to turn them into pockets by adding glue to both the sides and the bottom, trying to keep that bead of glue as thin as possible and as close to the edge as possible, because that's going to give me the most room for putting little tags and ephemera inside of these pockets. All right, so I'm just going to glue both of those down, and then I'm going to add the second cards into them. And I decided I wanted to add a little bit more, so I'm grabbing more ephemera, these little tags from that kit, and I'm just going to add them in here. And I noticed that, you know, I had all these teal colors, so I decided to keep those together. And then I had these like warmer orange brown colors, so I'm going to use all of these together. That's not that important. All of our kits pretty much match one another, but I have a thing with colors, so that's what I did. And then I'm adding some holes here to my panel. So you're going to want to punch it out with a hole punch, and then if you flip your panel over, you can actually use it as a guide on the second panel, and that will make sure that these holes like line up so that you don't have one that's like awkwardly higher or lower than the other. And then I decided to add a couple of eyelets here. I am going to actually spray paint these gold so that they kind of keep, again, with that warm color scheme I have going on and all of the like darker, warmer metals that I used on my cover. And then using an eyelet press, I'm just going to press those in like this. And now we can choose our ribbon for these closures. So I used a variety of colors and textures. I have some sari silk, I have a little bit of this jute cord, and then I have some ribbon from Scrap Cabin Shop on Etsy. And she has a variety of colors, so we have a whole bunch of them. I did use one of her white ribbons to actually dye it with a little bit of orange acrylic paint in water to give me this kind of muted orange color, just because I didn't have it and I wanted this. I felt like it would look nice with the journal. And I like to use a lot of ribbon, like a lot of ribbon. I like really long amounts of it, so that's again kind of up to preference, but I like my ribbons to be very long and luxurious, so I just went ahead and grabbed what I thought looked like a suitable amount, and then I'm cutting it in half to give me 2 equal pieces here, and I did that for every single ribbon that I'm using. And then you're just going to tug it through the eyelet that we punched earlier like this until you have a roughly even amounts. And then you're going to kind of tug that taut, and that will give you more room to add more ribbons. Now, I ended up adding the jute cord here, which was pretty thick, and I think I have found the max number of ribbons I can use for a closure. It was pretty tight, so you know, just keep that in mind when you're using all of your ribbons. But I really do like how they look. It's very luxurious. So, you know, I've got a problem. I use too many ribbons. I know I do, but I'm doing it anyway and no one can stop me. However, something to consider here, when you add this many ribbons, it does make, I don't know how to say this. It's like too thick on the back. So when you glue this panel down, there's going to be almost like a bulge where that ribbon is. So, you know, that kind of compromises the sturdiness of your panel. So what you're going to want to do is use a lot of glue, like a high quality glue, maybe even super glue if you have it. And then you're going to want to glue this panel down, and when you do, you're going to want to put some pressure on it and hold it there to kind of keep it in place while it dries. I actually used some clips kind of near where that ribbon closure is, and that's going to kind of apply the pressure I need to glue that down so that it's stable. And I didn't have any problem with the panel popping off, but you know, either you're going to want to use really good glue and some pressure, or you're going to want to use fewer ribbons. So that's just something to keep in mind while you're doing your closure. All right, so go ahead and let that dry completely. And then if you want to, you can round your spine by just adding a little bit of pressure here to kind of bend that cardboard. This is optional. I like a rounded spine on my journal. If you like a flat spine, you don't have to do this, but I like the way it looks, so that's what I'm doing. And then here we go. You can kind of see the base of our journal here. We have our closures, our inside cover panels, and then all of our pages are added into the journal. And to do some decorating, I'm using a little bit more of that Autumn Cottage ephemera that I have, just a couple sheets here. I didn't print off the whole kit. I'm keeping things kind of simple today. And then I do have these envelopes that I made in a previous video, and I will link those down in the description box if you haven't seen that already. But these were a really easy way to bulk out my journal and add a little bit of extra writing space. And then I went ahead and paper clipped most of these pieces in. It just makes it a little bit easier to remove them later if you want to, or save on writing space, and it also saves time when decorating. And then I've got some of these fall treasure tags that we made already previously on the channel, so I'm gonna just grab those and add those into the journal as well. And then I have some magic slider cards that are also fall themed I'll be using. And if you've been crafting along with us on the channel, you should already have some of these pieces available to decorate your own journal, so that's one of the benefits of, you know, crafting along with us as we go. Otherwise, I will have all of those videos linked down below if you want to go through and find them and craft them for yourself. And lastly, we have this freebie that is available in our Facebook group. It's already been out for a little while, but if you haven't seen it yet, make sure to go and join our Facebook group so that you can get access to these little fall tags that we gave away as a freebie there. And I'm going to be using those as well in my journal, along with some of those little fussy cut butterflies I used on the cover. I had some left over, so I'm just going through and gluing things down, paper clipping them. This probably took me max like 15 minutes to do. And this is kind of what I was left with at the end here, all of these little fall decorative elements. It's pretty simplistic, but I think it still turned out really cute, and it bulked up my journal plenty for tying it closed. So I'm just gonna grab handfuls of both of those ribbon closures and just tie them in a little bow here like this. And that is my completed junk journal here. So I'll go ahead and do a little final flip through for you guys, but I hope that you had fun crafting along with me today and got some inspiration for your own autumn journal. Again, I wanted this to be kind of a simplistic autumn journal, nothing too crazy here, just kind of a suggestion of fall, but something that would still be pretty all year round. And I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Honestly, considering it didn't take me very much time at all, I'm really happy with it. So let me know what you think down below. But otherwise, I think this is gonna be the last project we do for fall, and we're gonna start working on Christmas. So we have a lot of exciting stuff planned for Christmas, so make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss out. We also have a newsletter that you can join where you might hear about some upcoming surprises before everyone else. So again, you will find that link down in the description box below along with everything else. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching and crafting along with me, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye!